Hello, welcome everyone. I think we'll give people just one more minute to get into this meeting before we get started.
Well, this seems to be a popular topic. We're getting quite a few people joining today.
Everybody loves murals, Chris. Everybody loves murals.
That's true. I think that's very accurate.
All right, Chris, I think we've got a pretty good number in here now. If you want to get us started, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. So welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Merritt. I'm the State Historic Preservation Officer here for the Department of Cultural and Community Engagement. Thank you for joining our monthly webinar series in support of the Utah Main Street program. This week, we're bringing a sort of topical view on murals, which is all the rage, as the youngins say. And we're bringing in a couple different voices to talk to us today, but just a little bit of housekeeping is that we do this a monthly webinar. We have programming now through May lined out, and it's going to cover a lot of different arenas that are relevant to our Main Street community partners. I do want to point out we have a coordinator who started Monday, though he still can't get into his emails and he doesn't have a state computer yet, but we're getting there. Christian Clark is joining us today virtually. He will probably be the MC for these programs moving forward, but I will still be participating because I learn a lot of good things in these programs. So thank you, Christian, for joining, and thank you all for joining on this webinar series. I'm going to turn it over to Tracy Hansford, who's our sister Utah Division of Arts and Museums, and she's also on the advisory committee for the Main Street. And she organized this little fun fest this morning. So take it away, Tracy.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much, Chris. I just want to give a brief introduction of our three speakers this morning. So first up, we have Jansen Bennett. Jansen is the historical architect with the State Historic Preservation Office, so he works with Chris. Jansen's going to be running several of our future webinars for us. We're excited about that. Leslie Allen is the director of South Salt Lake City Arts Council, and Victoria Lyons is the co-director of Bad Dog Arts and an accomplished mural artist. So we are going to give each of them a chance to share their expertise about murals this morning, and then we will reserve questions for the end. But if you want to put questions in the chat so you don't forget, that would be a great place to hold them until we go through those at the end. All right. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jansen to get us started.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So I get to talk to you today about kind of the historical and technical considerations. I'm very excited, but before I kind of dive in, I want to first thank Nadia Gregerson, our SHPO's intern, who helped a lot with the research for this presentation. I also want to start off by just giving a quick disclaimer on the historical portion. The history of murals is broad and varied. So in order to fit everything into a 15-minute kind of presentation, I limited it to focusing specifically on the kind of modern movement of murals. So everything from about the late 19th century to the present. I also focused primarily on the United States. So there's lots of Europe and Africa and, you know, other wonderful continents and countries, but we're going to be talking specifically about the United States. So let's see. Mural is technically any piece of art that is attached directly to a wall instead of being hung or, put temporarily on a wall. And we see lots of murals from, prehistoric times with the Altamira cave paintings to friezes and mosaics in Pompeii to frescoes in the Renaissance with Leonardo da Vinci. It's something that, happens all the time and is a really convenient way to kind of make use of wall space and improve people's experience of the spaces where they live or spend lots of their time. So for our discussion, I'm going to start first with exterior advertisements. And these begin to really take root in the late 19th century from about the 1870s. And they started out as kind of being very hokey because they cost no money. And so it was things like snake oil and kind of traveling salesmen who would just kind of graffiti and paint a quick advertisement on the side of a building. But then, because it was inexpensive and looked good, lots of people started painting permanent, like really permanent advertisements on the sides of their buildings. For example, this one is from Paterson, New Jersey, and it's circa 1900. Now, this photograph was taken in the 1980s. And you can see that, the advertisement has faded a bit, but that the paint and the message is still there. We also have some more local examples, like this one in Morgan, Utah. And this one was painted in the 1940s, but it still has some of those same characteristics. An advertisement painted directly on brick. And also these were painted typically with either whitewash, which is a mineral-based paint, or oil paint. And they were painted not on the entire side of a building, but on just a small portion of the building, which helped kind of promote the longevity and lifespan of the mural. They even took place on kind of less kind of small businessy type operations, like this one for a power plant up Weber Canyon. So from there, on the exterior kind of building advertisements, we need to, although I said I would talk only about United States, it's also important to mention Mexican muralism. So there isn't lots of kind of exterior mural painting besides advertisements outside of Mexican muralism. So artists like Diego Rivera began painting these really elaborate and really awesome murals. Diego Rivera specialized on more interior murals, like this one from the Palacio Nacional in Mexico City. But his contemporaries, like David Alfaro Siqueiros, worked on exterior sides of buildings, like this one in Los Angeles. So we see this movement where, they're really bold and stylistic artworks being put on the exterior of buildings. And it from about the 1920s to the 1950s is kind of the key period for Mexican muralism that extends up into California. But I also want to note that we still see elements, and especially stylistic elements, of this movement today. So this was painted in the 1970s, again in LA, but that's an important kind of backdrop of exterior murals being placed directly on buildings. Another kind of precedent and forefather of the current kind of mural craze is the Works Progress Administration during the Great Depression commissioned tons of murals, upwards of 1,800 murals to be placed on public buildings. And the goal was to have them kind of very focused on the place where they were going to be executed. So this one is one for the post office in San Pedro, California, and it focuses all on the transportation of mail. Although they, like all of these murals were commissioned and put on public buildings, they typically occurred on the interior of the public buildings. And so in the lobby space or in a large meeting room or assembly hall. And so they are very cool and definitely get murals into the kind of collective consciousness of the United States, but they are all on the interior. To get to where we are now, where there are lots of murals being placed on the exterior of buildings, we have to give lots of credit to street art. And the street art movement really kind of takes root in the 1970s when two collectives, one of which was the United Graffiti Artists in New York City, opened galleries and put lots of graffiti. And it stylistically, it was just kind of what you see in this publication from the United Graffiti Artists. So it takes street art, well, graffiti, and brings it into the art world and establishes it as art, not like graffiti or something to be washed off of a building, but something to be embraced and celebrated as street art. And gradually, the street art installations get larger and more refined. And so Keith Haring is one of those artists who kind of started taking up large walls with his work, such as this one, which is Crack is Whack from the 80s. And then this progression where it gets larger and more refined continues up until the present day with artists such as Banksy, who use stencils and kind of gets this lovely combination of like acknowledging that it's graffiti with the paint drips on the lettering, but also has a much more refined style with his figure work. And all of that leads into kind of what we see today with very large murals, very refined and very clearly art as opposed to graffiti being placed on buildings. So there is all of the historical backdrop before we discuss the technical considerations. And I'd want to focus first on two different methods of installation. So these are a group of 4 murals in Provo, and one mural is applied directly to the wall, one is applied indirectly to the wall. So I'm not sure about you, but when I think of murals, I often think of the direct installation, where you have a wall, an exterior wall that is just painted right over the existing material. And it is great and effective and lovely. But I hope I don't break too many hearts, but it does kind of lead to some issues. So this is a view of the One Time in Provo mural when it was first painted and completed in 2018. And this is a view of the same mural, but taken a few months ago when I was in Provo. And you can see that the paint has faded a little bit, nothing kind of too bad, but still very effective, still very beautiful. But if you look more closely, you can start to see a few areas where there's some damage. So what's happened is the wall has been painted and that paint forms a barrier over the masonry that water can't escape. So over time, water gets into the wall, whether through a crack in the paint or through a leak in the roof, or sometimes even just through the activity inside a building. We see that a lot with restaurants where there's lots of cooking, lots of humidity. That moisture gets into the wall and tries to escape out of the exterior, but it can't. And so water begins to collect between the brick and the paint and just kind of stick there and try to get out and try to get out and try to get out. And so then the paint will start to bubble. And then eventually when that bubble kind of opens or bursts, the water can escape, but it has already deteriorated the exterior surface of the brick. And here, again, I want to point out that this is over the course of 4 years. So it hasn't been too long since this mural was in place. And we're already seeing some signs of damage. However, if nothing is done, i.e. if the paint isn't removed, then more damage just kind of continues and continues and continues until you get to the point where, like on the image on the left, the paint just peels off of the wall entirely and takes portions of the brick with it. Or like on the right, the brick deteriorates to such an extent that it falls away from the wall and takes paint with it. So again, I love a mural, but when it's applied like this, there are kind of risks and damages that will occur both to the artwork and to the brick wall itself. So what can be done? There are some precautions. First, you can paint on only a portion of the wall. That will make it so that water can escape around the mural, and it will take some time, but it will last a lot longer. Another one is to use a silicate paint, which is a mineral-based paint that sits atop of the wall, but still allows moisture to come in and go out of the mural without damaging it or the wall. And so this is one that was done at the early 21st century, so just within the last few decades. But there are examples of silicate-based paint murals that have lasted for upwards of 200 years and that are still beautiful. The wall isn't damaged, everyone's happy. But I will mention that the one downside to this approach is that the silicate paint costs up like 2 to 3 times as much as just a paint you can pick up at the hardware store, but it will last at least 2 to 3 times longer and will not damage your wall. Another precaution is to choose the right kind of wall. So walls that are made of wood are the best option, but painting on metal or on concrete are both better, but will still have some damage within maybe 10 to 15 years. Paint on cinder block won't damage the wall, but the mural will peel off, kind of the way we've seen on the masonry. And then the kind of least preferable option is to paint a wall on brick. And then finally, the last one is to use an indirect installation method. So this is that mural that in Provo, the Utah Valley Triptych, and it is made of vinyl prints, so really big sheets of vinyl that have been attached into the brick wall, but you can see that there's this gap and space in between the brick and the vinyl that will allow moisture to escape without any issue. And in this case, they had painted the wall before putting it up, so there may still be damage, but the murals will stay great forever. this is one that, sorry, this indirect installation method, it has also been used fairly frequently, even within the state of Utah, with this seducing mural from Daniel Growler in 2020. And there it is metal panel that's been painted and framed and then attached directly to the masonry wall. So by doing that, it ensures that the mural stays nice, but also so that the wall will not be damaged over time. I'm putting here a few resources that are really great and cover lots of this information for your future reference. Also, feel free to contact me. I know that this is a very small presentation, but I'm happy to talk about murals and visit a wall that you're thinking of putting a mural on, just to talk over kind of process and to brainstorm ways that we can still have a mural while protecting both the artwork and the wall itself. So, and then bibliography for anyone's reference. But thanks, and I will look forward to any questions you may have at the end.
Okay, I guess I'm up. I'm Leslie Allen, and I'm really happy to be here. I love talking about murals, and we started, I work for the South Salt Lake Arts Council, and 5 years ago we started Mural Fest. We were looking to revitalize our downtown, and creative placemaking was one of our strategies, and murals are a great less expensive creative placemaking tool to help revitalize neighborhoods. And we had some really organic growth in the neighborhood anyway, and some creative businesses and lots of people doing amazing things in the neighborhood. So it was the perfect timing. The goal of Mural Fest was to do 10 murals every year for 10 years. So we're halfway there. And so as far as starting, you want to do a mural in your community, there's so much to consider. It's, we originally just, you think, how hard can it be? Let's go paint a wall. But as you can see, Jansen already pointed out a lot of things that you need to consider. But I will start with just the basics. You obviously need an artist and you need a wall. If you already have a wall that you have in mind, and you're just looking to find an artist, there's different ways that you can go about that. We typically, you can start out by doing a call for artists, and there is a really great resource online called the publicartist.org website. It's free. There are others that you have to pay for. We use social media to advertise ours. We now have a website, themuralfest.com, that we also announce our call on. I send it to other local arts agencies. And word of mouth, we've built an email list over the years that we send it out to as well. And this is an example of the call for artists that we use. There's lots of different ways you can go about it. Like I said, there's some online platforms that allow you to have, the artist just can submit everything there, but typically you have to pay for those. So we just put a link to this PDF that has all of the information that the artist would need in terms of the timeline, what the stipend is. If you already have a wall in mind, and if it's a private business, you may have a situation where the business owner has an artist in mind, or they have a certain style of art that they want, or then you may just go the route of selecting an artist. But it also depends on where the funding is coming from. If the property owner is paying for it, obviously they have a lot more say in it. If you're like us and you're using public funds to pay for the mural, then this, a more transparent process is best to do, an open call for artists like this. There's also You can do it two ways. You can do an RFP or an RFQ. An RFQ is what we choose to do, a request for qualifications, meaning we don't ask the artist to submit a specific design for what they would do. We just ask them to submit examples of their previous work, their resumes, bios, CVs, all that. And then we select the artist based on their submission. If you choose to do an RFP, you already have the wall, and you know exactly the specifications of the wall. Then you can, do more of an RFP, ask the artist to submit a specific proposal. There is, that you're requiring the artist to do work ahead of time when you do that. So for the artists that sometimes it's good to narrow it down through an RFQ, depending on how many artists that we get last year we had over 250 artists apply. So as you can imagine, we were not going to ask 250 artists to submit proposals and spend the time. But if you did narrow it down through an RFQ, and then you could possibly select maybe 10 artists, 15 artists to submit an RFP, and then you could pay them a little stipend so that they're getting paid for the time that they're putting into it. I will also put in the chat, Americans for the Arts has a really great resource on creating a public art or a call for artists. And I'll put that in there as well. Once we have our RFQ selected, then we put it out. We usually have about a 2-week, 3-week timeline, and then we put the artist through a jury selection. And Tracy, do you have the criteria here that we've created? This is just what we feel is important to us, and we rate the artist based on these 4 or 5 criteria. But you could, again, adapt this to what works best for you. Once we have the artist selected, then we create an artist agreement or a contract with them that lays out the terms of the project, the timeline, what they're getting paid. And we typically pay them a stipend that also has to include their materials and supplies, but you can choose to do that whatever works best based on your budget. I'll talk a little bit more about costs in a minute. If you already have a wall, that's great. Sometimes finding a wall is a challenge. We try to do 10 every year, so we're trying to find 10, and that can get a little hard sometimes. As the project has grown and businesses and the community sees the impact that it's having on the neighborhood and drawing people into the neighborhood, we're now getting businesses that are contacting us and asking for murals. And also the talent, the level of artists that are applying has just grown like crazy over the years too. Once we have a business selected, we ask the business to pitch in a portion of the artist stipend. They pay about 25% of the stipend. And we ask them to sign a temporary lease agreement with the city. It requires them to keep the mural up for 3 years. That's just what we chose to do. We of course want it to last forever, but we know that's not always possible, and we don't want a property owner to get into a situation where they can't sell their building because they're locked into the mural and all that. Tracy, I have an example of just, it's same again. It's very simple. The back page. If this is for a business that wants to, that's interested in having a mural, they can draw us a little picture of their wall and tell us the specifications and things like this. Just basically getting them to commit to the process. And then we always take before photos of the wall, and it's great to document what the wall looked like before, and you can really see the growth in the neighborhood and how it's transformed. Once we have the walls and the artist selected, then it's a big puzzle putting it together, matching the artists with the walls. But if you're not doing, if you're not doing multiple murals, then that's not an issue. But there's a lot to consider when you're doing a mural on a private business. How much input does the business owner want in the mural? If you, as far as the stipend goes, we are paying artists, we try to pay them more every year, and our budget is growing, and we wish we could pay them even more, but we pay considerably less than what a business would pay if they were to commission a private mural on their building. The rate there is anywhere from $20 to $30 a square foot. So you can imagine it gets very expensive to do large murals. Artists are usually very happy to be involved in community projects like Mural Fest, but they really feel strongly about being able to stick to their style and present what they want in the gallery, our outdoor gallery. We also, once the business is paired with the artist, then the artist and the business owner will work together on a mural proposal. We then send that to our community development department, and it has to be approved by them, because currently we don't have a mural ordinance. It falls under our sign ordinance. And so murals, our sign ordinance says that murals cannot have any advertising or lettering or anything that can be deemed as an advertisement. So you want to consider city code and how murals fall into that as well. The timeline, we typically spend about 5 or 6 months on Mural Fest. By the time we do the call for artists in January, our artists are usually selected by February. We try to have the property owners and murals and artists matched up by March, design proposals in by April, and then the painting begins in May. Most of our artists can do a mural in 1 week. We've seen everything from 2 weeks to 2 days. So artists you will find they're all over the board. They're all very different in every way. So it just really depends on the artist.
Leslie, I'm just going to give you a little nudge on time.
I know. I'm trying to get through this really fast.
You have so much.
The other thing to consider is logistics. You want to look at equipment. Will you need a lift, a bucket truck to complete the mural? Will you be accessing the wall from another property owner's property, parking lot, something like that? We ran into that last year. Insurance, who's carrying the liability? Does the artist have their own insurance? What else? Gosh, yeah, there's just and we also cover all of our murals with an anti-graffiti coating once they're finished, so that helps if a mural gets tagged. It's easier to get the tag off. It doesn't come off completely. And then you always want to build in maintenance costs to your budget, because you will eventually need to do some maintenance on the mural, whether it's removing tagging or repairing it in some way, water damage too. So, okay, I'll stop there.
Perfect. Do you want to explain these beautiful photos really quick before we move on?
Yeah, this is probably the mural that we're the most proud of. We just did this this last year in 2022. This artist is Thomas Turner from Atlanta. And that wall, by the way, is just like a dream come true for an artist. This, a big 5-story wall like that. This took him 10 days, and he was on the lift the whole time, sun up to sundown. The next photo, I just wanted to show you this because we have professional photos of the murals, and then we take portraits of the artists by their murals. This is Rafael Blanco from Chicago, and this is on Haven Avenue, 141 West Haven Avenue. And then we throw a big party at the end. We have a celebration when all the murals are finished. This is a map for our artist meet and greet. Instead of having, centralized party, like we want people to get out and walk around and see the murals, but we had food trucks and we had about 3,000 people in attendance this past May. So, yeah. It's a lot to cover, but yes, if you ever have any questions, I love talking about it and I'm happy to help anytime.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we'll have Victoria take the theoretical microphone. All right. I think we are on the right photo now, Victoria. But if you are speaking, you are still muted.
Okay.
There we go.
I'm Victoria Lyons, and I represent both Bad Dog Arts and Moon Lion Arts. Bad Dog Arts is a nonprofit organization, and this is an organization that Michael Moonbird and I founded 25 years ago. So that's us in the photo with our little dog Oreo. And Moon Lion Arts is our business where we create our own art outside of the nonprofit. So we have several things going on. So my experience with public arts began with a commission that was awarded through the Salt Lake City Arts Council back in 2001. And that project was one of the track stations on 4th South. And that was right before the 2002 Olympics happened. And so we collaborated with 2 other artists and also collaborated with all the children in our program at the time. So kids got to create images, and we curated lots of different kinds of imagery, and that was put into glass panels and metal panels and mosaics, and it was a pretty eclectic track station. So over the years, our organization has created a variety of different kinds of public art projects. So not everything that we have done is necessarily painted murals. Some of our projects have been in schools where we collaborate with school children. And some of them have been in public spaces like Whole Foods and Charlie Square. There's a project in West Valley City Hall. There's a freeway underpass that's a really big project that went over about a 5-year period that we were involved in. We have this is a library project that you see on screen here at the Glendale Library. And then we have a big project in Gunnison. So while we're on this project, or looking at these images, this is a glazed tile mural. So it's not a typical painted mural. We take pre-made porcelain tiles and do hand paint them with ceramic glaze. And this particular mural is 6 feet in height and approximately 30 feet in length. And then in addition, we created these really fun benches that echo some of the imagery that's in the overall mural. And since the Glendale community is a very diverse community, one of the things they asked for in the RFP was they had a phrase called beyond books. So libraries have really evolved to reaching the community in so many different ways. And this mural we created to be representative of the diversity of that community. So not focusing on any one culture, but bringing in many cultures through all of this different imagery that we have produced here. And we've worked with a variety of materials, as I've mentioned, and this has been one of our favorite materials to work with. I'm going to switch over to the Moon Lion website. And this particular project is one that was done in the community of Gunnison. So if you're traveling towards the middle of the state, either headed down south or north, depending on where you're located, try to make a little detour into Gunnison. This is a mural that's located in the downtown area of Gunnison, right across from their city hall, and it's in a location. The block is called Legacy Square, and it has this great big beautiful clock tower in that square. That's pretty impressive. So Legacy Wall is a mural, and in this photo you can see it's the middle section is what I showed initially up here. That middle section is about four feet in height, or the overall wall is about 6 feet in height. And the width of that middle section is done very kind of folk art in style. And so the way this mural happened is that we met with a committee, and the committee was consisted of different townspeople, and of course it was led by the mayor of their city, Lori Ney. Lori Ney and another key member, Diana Spencer, they were responsible for raising funds for this mural to happen, for them to bring us in. And this kind of shows a little bit of the details on the mural. And they really wanted to have the rural nature of their community represented. So you can see the tractor, and we showed different kinds of crops that have been grown over the years. There's all kinds of stories integrated with this mural. This bus was called Jesse's Bus. Jesse drove that bus in the community for 50 years, from when he got out of high school and then retired. And so that was an interesting thing to learn about their community. So there was sheep raised, and just a lot that we learned about the community. Michael and I met with the committee members, probably a total of at least 5 times, where we would make different revisions of our project idea. So this was a project that was not a fast track, couple week project. This came about over quite a long period of time, with us making revisions. And the first time we showed up with our drawings and sketches, we had a rather generic mountain backdrop. Well, in this slide, you can see this mountain range. When they saw our first version, they said, "Oh no, those aren't our mountains." So we learned that particular mountain is called Mary's Nipple, and and it's very specific to that particular area. So we worked very closely with the community on what they wanted to have created, what they felt was important to be represented. There's a lot of hunters. We have deer represented, and there's a portion of it that has elk, and it's a really fascinating mural when you start seeing all the little things up close. Then, in addition to that kind of folk art style, they wanted to have some historic tiles. So these historic tiles are done in a way that from a distance, they look very photographic. The source material was taken from historic photos, but it's still glazed tiles. So that's Captain Gunnison. And we hand glaze these tiles. Each one of these tiles is 12 inches by 12 inches put together, and then tile set with the contrasting colors surrounding. So this
Victoria, I'm going to give you a little nudge on time as well if you want to start to wrap up.
Okay. So we have a couple of different styles integrated here. That was when they were installing. The advantages of a tile mural is that it's very weatherproof, graffiti proof. The artist can work in the studio instead of out in the elements, and there is no fading or deterioration over time. The disadvantages of this kind of mural, as you can well imagine, is that it's much more time consuming to produce and much more costly to commission than your typical painted mural. But we also have done painted murals throughout the years too. And it just kind of depends on what what's being commissioned and what the budget is. So I'll end with that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for so much wonderful information about murals. You've done such a great job giving us an overview. There were a couple questions in the chat I want to start with. So the first one was if Leslie would be willing to share her documents that she was showing, and she has emailed them to me, and I will email them out to everyone that registered for this webinar. The second question I see here is if a mural project is a renewal of a historic advertisement, I assume there are different rules for advertisements. I'm going to punt that one to Jansen.
Yeah, so I'm not sure which rules we are talking about. It would be the same from an architectural preservation standpoint, but we'd want to look at a case-by-case basis on what materials were used originally, as well as what the kind of substrate, what the wall is made out of, as well as what condition the wall is in currently. And so, for example, if the brick is very damaged, then it may be worthwhile to look into some sort of a consolidant to hopefully kind of repair or prevent future damage. And then also we can get into kind of the conservation question of how do you repair it while still acknowledging kind of the original. If it's a historic advertisement, I'm guessing we're talking that it's, decades old as opposed to a few years old, where if there's a damaged mural that's a few years old, it is just considered kind of typical maintenance to go back and touch up or repair a mural. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Leslie adds, it would depend on your city's code. So thank you for that note. Other questions, if you want to raise your hand, either digital or virtual or in person, I can see all of you if you've got your video on. That would be great.
I don't have a specific question, but thank you so much for sharing this. We're trying to, do some murals in Tooele City, right? We did one last fall about a year ago, and we just kind of did it one-off, right? But we want to have more of a program but it's just, there's so many logistical things to work out, right? So this honestly is so helpful just to be able to see and hopefully repurpose some of your applications and like these agreements, like that just, there's nobody working on it but me. So it's like, okay, here we go. It just saves so much time, and thank you for being willing to share those, Leslie.
I just dropped into the chat the Americans for the Arts Call for Artists resource guide that Leslie mentioned earlier. So that's available as well. All right, if we don't have more questions, I want to turn it back to our speakers and just see if you are thought of one more thing that you're dying to add, if you wished you had said one more thing. Jansen?
Okay, so I do, and it's something that Leslie mentioned. There are graffiti resistant coatings that are wonderful and helpful. However, some of them are vapor permeable, which means that they'll let water in and out, and some of them aren't. And so you'll want to just double check before you apply one that it is vapor permeable. And other than that, please reach out to me with any questions or concerns. I am excited to see, a plethora of murals throughout the state, and I'm happy to kind of troubleshoot or brainstorm on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Leslie, did you think of something?
Well, I just, I was thinking about what Jared just said and how it's just him and Jared, it was just me. And five years ago, and well, I'm the only Arts Council staff, and we had a partner organization that helped us out, and we did, let's just start painting some walls. And it's just, look where we've just created this amazing program, and we get artists from all over the world that email me and want to paint in our city, and it's really, so you can do it.
Thank you. And Victoria, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, as someone that runs a nonprofit, and I wear a lot of different hats and do a lot of different things, but I guess in this context, I kind of see myself as advocate for the artist. And so as you venture down this road of including more art in your communities, I really encourage you to come up with creative ways to really pay the artists as much as you can. Artists work really hard to learn their craft. And there's too many times I've seen artists, are asked to donate their time and their skills. And if those artists continue to just donate their time and skills, it's pretty difficult for the artist. And I've seen artists asked to take a very, very low stipend, or work for a little to create these big projects to gain exposure. We don't want artists to die of exposure. So any ways that you can be creative to get local businesses or chambers of commerce to match any of the city funds or grant funding, I'd like to encourage you all to pay artists really what they're worth, because it's so worthwhile. And these public art projects and murals do so much for our communities.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Victoria. And on that note, I'm dropping into the chat a link to Utah Division of Arts and Museums project grants. These are not open right now. They'll reopen in the spring, but this might be an opportunity for you all to access some grant funding to make a mural project happen. I'm going to put it out there and say that there are lots of requirements for our grants. And if you have questions, please reach out to me or our grants team. But you might want to look at this and think about if it might fit a project in your community down the road, since these won't open again until next year.
But Tracy, did I hear you just say you'll waive all the requirements for mural projects though, right?
No. We are very favorable towards rural applications, though. I will put that out there, Jared. How about that? All right. Well, folks, I think that is the conclusion of our webinar. Thank you so much to Jansen, Leslie, and Victoria. They worked really hard to get this all together for us. I'll send out a follow-up email with these resources. And any last thoughts, Chris?
No, I thought this was very educational, edumacational, as the kids say today, on how to do murals really well. And I appreciate these lessons learned, because murals are beautiful ways to improve downtowns, but let's do it in a way that doesn't hurt the buildings that they're upon. So I appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.